A guy is driving when suddenly his car runs out of gas. Just then, a bee buzzes in through the window. "Hey, what's going on?" asks the bee. "Out of gas," the guy replies. The bee says, "Hang tight," and zooms off. A few minutes later, the guy sees a whole swarm of bees fly over and dive right into his gas tank. After a little while, the bees fly away. "Go ahead, give it a try," says the bee. The guy turns the key, and the car starts perfectly. "Wow, what did you put in my tank?" he asks. The bee grins and says, "BP." A woman in her mid-40s went to a plastic surgeon to discuss getting a facelift. The surgeon, eager to show her the latest advancement, introduced a revolutionary procedure called the button. This small button is placed at the top of a woman's head, and with a simple twist, it tightens the skin, providing an instant facelift effect. Naturally, the woman was intrigued and decided to go for the button. Over the years, she turned it every now and then, and it kept her looking fresh, youthful, and rejuvenated. But after 15 years of using it, she came back to the surgeon, looking a bit distressed. "Doctor," she said, "I love the results, but I'm having two problems. First, I have these awful bags under my eyes, and no matter how many times I turn the button, they don't go away." The doctor took a close look at her and then said, "Well, those aren't bags. Those are your knees." The woman blinked, paused for a second, and sighed. "Great. I guess I'm not even going to bother asking about the double chin." Every Friday night after work, Bubba would fire up his grill and cook some delicious venison steaks. But all of Bubba's neighbors were Catholic, and during Lent, they couldn't eat meat on Fridays. The mouth-watering aroma of Bubba's steaks was causing quite the stir, so they decided to talk to their priest. The priest came over to Bubba's house and suggested, "Bubba, why don't you become Catholic? That'll solve the problem." So Bubba went through some classes, studied hard, and finally attended Mass. As the priest sprinkled holy water over him, he said, "You were born a Baptist, raised a Baptist, but now you are a Catholic." The neighbors were thrilled. Finally, peace. But when Friday night came around, that familiar smell of grilled venison filled the air again. The neighbors were furious. They called the priest, and he rushed over ready to give Bubba a stern talking to. But when he got to the backyard, he froze. There was Bubba, standing by the grill, holding a small bottle of holy water. He carefully sprinkled the meat and said, "You were born a deer, you were raised a deer, but now you are a catfish." Grandpa's miracle bathroom light. An 80-year-old man goes in for a checkup. The doctor says, "George, you're in amazing shape for your age. How's your mind? Your spirit? You at peace with the big guy upstairs?" George smiles and says, "Doc, me and God, we're tight. He even looks out for me at night. I can barely see, but when I get up to go to the bathroom, poof, the light comes on, and when I'm done, poof, the light goes off. Every time. God's got my back." The doctor is stunned. "That's incredible." Later, just to follow up, the doctor calls George's wife. "Ethel," he says, "George is doing great, but I have to ask, he says God turns the bathroom light on and off for him at night. Is that really true?" There's a pause. Then Ethel shrieks, "Oh no, he's peeing in the fridge again." Larry's old shed went up in flames, and his wife, Betty, got right on the phone with their insurance company. She said, "We had that shed insured for $50,000, and I'd like to collect." The agent calmly responded, "Ma'am, that's not exactly how it works. First, we send someone out to inspect the damage. Then we calculate the value and replace it with something of equal worth." There was a pause on the line. Then Betty said, "All right. In that case, I'd like to cancel my husband's life insurance." On hearing that her elderly grandfather had just passed away, Katie went straight to her grandparents' house to visit her 95-year-old grandmother and comfort her. When she asked how her grandfather had died, her grandmother replied, He had a heart attack while we were making love on Sunday morning. Horrified, Katie told her grandmother that two people nearly 100 years old having sex would surely be asking for trouble. "Oh, no, my dear," replied Granny. "Many years ago, realizing our advanced age, we figured out the best time to do it was when the church bells would start to ring. It was just the right rhythm, nice and slow and even, nothing too strenuous, simply in on the ding and out on the dong." She paused, wiped away a tear, and then continued. "And if that damned ice cream truck hadn't come along, he'd still be alive today." "Late again," the third-grade teacher said to little Johnny. "It isn't my fault, Miss Crabtree. You can blame this on my daddy. The reason I'm 3 hours late is Daddy sleeps without any clothes." Now Miss Crabtree had taught grammar school for 30-some-odd years, so she asked little Johnny what he meant by that, despite her mounting fears. Full of grins and mischief, and in the flower of his youth, little Johnny and Trouble were old friends, but he always told the truth. "You see, Miss Crabtree, at the ranch we got this here low-down coyote. The last few nights he got 6 hens and killed Ma's best milk goat, and last night, when Daddy heard a noise out in the chicken pen, he grabbed his gun and said to Ma, 'That coyote's back again. I'm a-gonna get him.' 'Stay back,' he yelled to all us kids. He was naked as a jaybird, no boots, no pants, no shirt. To the henhouse he crawled, just like an Injun on the snoop. Then he stuck that double barrel through the window of the coop. As he stared into the darkness, with coyotes on his mind, our old black lab Hudson woke up and came sneaking up behind Daddy. Then we all looked on. Plumb helpless old Hudson stuck that cold nose in Daddy's crack. 'Miss Crabtree, we've been cleaning chickens since 3 o'clock this morning.'" A teacher was working with a group of underprivileged city children, trying to broaden their horizons through sensory exploration. With their eyes closed, they would feel objects from pumice stones to pine cones and smell aromatic herbs and exotic fruits. Then one day, the teacher brought in a great variety of Lifesavers candy, more flavors than you could ever imagine. "Children, I'd like you to close your eyes and taste these," announced the teacher. Without difficulty, they managed to identify the taste of cherries, lemons, and mint, but when the teacher had them put honey-flavored Lifesavers in their mouths, every one of the children was stumped. "I'll give you a hint," said the teacher. "It's something your daddy and mommy probably call each other all the time." Instantly, one of the children spat the Lifesaver out of his mouth and shouted, "Spit 'em out, you guys! They're assholes!" A blonde city girl named Amy marries a Colorado rancher. One morning, on his way out to check on the cows, the rancher says to Amy, "The insemination man is coming over to impregnate one of our cows, so I drove a nail into the 2x4 just above where the cow's stall is in the barn. Please show him where the cow is when he gets here, okay?" The rancher leaves for the fields. After a while, the artificial insemination man arrives and knocks on the front door. "I came to inseminate the cow," he said. Amy takes him down to the barn. They walk along the row of cows, and when Amy sees the nail, she tells him, "This is the one right here." The man, assuming he is dealing with an airhead blonde, asks, "Tell me, lady, because I'm dying to know. How would you know that this is the right cow to be bred?" "That's simple," she said. "By the nail that's over its stall," she explains very confidently. Laughing rudely at her, the man says, "And what, pray tell, is the nail for?" The blonde turns to walk away and says sweetly over her shoulder, "I guess it's to hang your pants on," she replied. Students in an advanced biology class were taking their midterm exam. The last question was, "Name 7 advantages of mother's milk." The question was worth 70 points or none at all. One student, in particular, was hard put to think of 7 advantages. However, he wrote, 1. It is the perfect formula for the child. 2. It provides immunity against several diseases. 3. It is always the right temperature. 4. It is inexpensive. 5. It bonds the child to the mother and vice versa. 6. It is always available as needed. And then the student was stuck. Finally, in desperation, just before the bell rang indicating the end of the test, he wrote, 7. It comes in 2 attractive containers, and it's high enough off the ground where the cat can't get it. He was awarded an A. An old married couple no sooner hit the pillows when the old man passes gas and says, 7 points. His wife rolls over and says, "What in the world was that?" The old man replied, "It's fart football." A few minutes later, his wife lets one go and says, "Touchdown, tie score." After about 5 minutes, the old man lets another one go and says, "Aha, I'm ahead 14-7. Not to be outdone, the wife rips out another one and says, "Touchdown, tie score." 5 seconds go by and she lets out a little squeaker and says, "Field goal, I lead 17-14. Now the pressure is on for the old man. He refuses to get beaten by a woman, so he strains real hard. Since defeat is totally unacceptable, he gives it everything he's got and accidentally poops in the bed. The wife says, "What the hell was that?" The old man says, "Halftime, switch sides." Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful queen with large breasts. Nick the Dragon Slayer obsessed over the queen's breasts for this reason. He knew that the penalty for his desire would be death should he try to touch them, but he had to try. One day, Nick revealed his secret desire to his colleague, Horatio the physician, the king's chief doctor. Horatio thought about this and said that he could arrange for Nick to more than satisfy his desire, but it would cost him 1,000 gold coins to arrange it. Without pause, Nick readily agreed to the scheme. The next day, Horatio made a batch of itching powder and poured a little bit into the queen's bra while she bathed. Soon after she dressed, the itching commenced and grew intense. Upon being summoned to the royal chambers to address this incident, Horatio informed the king and queen that only a special saliva, if applied for 4 hours, would cure this type of itch, and that tests had shown that only the saliva of Nick would work as the antidote to cure the itch. The king, eager to help his queen, quickly summoned Nick to their chambers. Horatio then slipped Nick the antidote for the itching powder, which he put into his mouth, and for the next 4 hours, Nick worked passionately on the queen's breasts. The queen's itching was eventually relieved, and Nick left satisfied and hailed as a hero. Upon returning to his chamber, Nick found Horatio demanding his payment of 1,000 gold coins. With his obsession now satisfied, Nick couldn't have cared less, and, knowing that Horatio could never report this matter to the king, and with a laugh, told him to get lost. The next day, Horatio slipped a massive dose of the same itching powder into the king's underwear. A little boy asked his teacher if he could go to the bathroom, and she said yes. When he went to wipe his backside, there was no toilet paper, so he used his hand. When he got back to class, his teacher asked, "What do you have in your hand?" The boy said, "A little leprechaun, and if I open my hand, he'll get scared away." So he wouldn't open his hand for the teacher, and he was then sent to the principal's office, and the principal asked him, "What do you have in your hand, son?" The little boy said, "A little leprechaun, and if I open my hands, he'll get scared away." The principal got mad and yelled, "Open your hand now!" So the little boy did, and then the little boy said, "Oh, great, now look what you did. You scared the shit out of him." Harry and his wife are having hard financial times, so they decide that she'll become a hooker. She's not quite sure what to do, so Harry says, "Stand in front of that bar and pick up a guy. Tell him that you charge $100. If you have a question, I'll be parked around the corner." She's standing there for 5 minutes when a guy pulls up and asks, "How much?" She says, $100? He says, "All I got is 30. She says, "Hold on," and runs back to Harry and asks, "What can he get for 30? Harry replies, "Quack." She runs back and tells the guy all he gets for $30 is a quack. He agrees and she gets in the car. He unzips his pants, and out pops his penis, and it's huge. She stares at it for a minute and then says, "I'll be right back." She runs back to Harry and asks, "Can you loan this guy $70?" A small church had a very attractive, big-busted organist named Susan, and her breasts were so large that they bounced and jiggled while she played the organ. Unfortunately, she distracted the male part of the congregation considerably. The very proper church ladies were appalled. They said something had to be done about this or they would have to get another organist. So one of the ladies approached Susan very discreetly about the problem and told her to mash up some green persimmons and rub them on her nipples and all over her breasts, which should cause them to shrink in size, but warned her not to taste any of the green persimmons, because they are so sour they will make your mouth pucker up and you won't be able to talk properly for a while. The voluptuous organist reluctantly agreed to try it. The following Sunday morning, the minister walked up to the pulpit and said, "Due to their circumstances beyond my control, we will not have a Thurman Tuesday." A nurse was on duty in the emergency room when a young woman with purple hair styled into a punk rocker mohawk, sporting a variety of tattoos and wearing strange clothing, entered the ER. It was quickly determined that the patient had acute appendicitis, so she was scheduled for immediate surgery. When she was completely disrobed on the operating table, the staff noticed that her pubic hair had been dyed green, and above it there was a tattoo that read, "Keep off the grass." Once the surgery was completed, the surgeon wrote a short note on the patient's dressing, which said, "Sorry, had to mow the lawn." A little boy was sitting on the footpath with a bottle of turpentine. He was shaking it up and watching all the bubbles. A priest came along and asked the little boy what he had. The little boy said, "This is the most powerful liquid in the world. It's called turpentine." The priest said, "No, the most powerful liquid in the world is holy water. If you rub it on a pregnant woman's belly, she'll pass a healthy baby." The little boy replied, "If you rub turpentine on a cat's ass, he'll pass a Harley Davidson." Jack goes to his friend Mike and says, "I'm sleeping with the minister's wife. Can you keep him back in church for an hour after service for me?" Mike doesn't like it, but being a friend, he agrees. After the service, Mike starts talking to the minister, asking him all sorts of stupid questions, just to keep him occupied. Finally, the minister gets annoyed and asks Mike what he's really up to. Mike, feeling guilty, finally confesses to the minister, "My friend is sleeping with your wife right now, so he asked me to keep you occupied." The minister thinks for a minute, smiles, puts a brotherly hand on Mike's shoulder, and says, "You better hurry home now. My wife died a year ago." Steve is shopping for a new motorcycle. He finally finds one for a great price. The motorcycle is missing a seal, though, so whenever it rains, Steve has to smear Vaseline over the spot where the seal should be. Steve's girlfriend is having him over for dinner to meet her parents one evening. He drives his new motorcycle to his girlfriend's house. She is waiting outside for him when he arrives. "No matter what happens at dinner tonight, don't say a word. Our family had a fight a while ago about doing the dinner dishes. We haven't done any since, and the first person to speak at dinner has to do them." Steve sits down for dinner and soon notices that his girlfriend wasn't exaggerating. It is just how she described it. Dishes are piled up to the ceiling in the kitchen, and nobody is saying a word. Steve decides to have a little fun. He grabs his girlfriend, throws her onto the table, and has sex with her in front of her parents. His girlfriend is a little flustered, her father is obviously livid, and her mother is horrified. Yet, when Steve and his girlfriend resume their places at the dinner table, nobody says a word. A few minutes later, Steve grabs his girlfriend's mom, throws her onto the table, and does a repeat performance. Now his girlfriend is furious, her father is boiling, and her mother is a little more pleased. But still, there is complete silence at the table. Suddenly, there is a loud clap of thunder, and it starts to rain. Steve remembers his motorcycle outside, and so he jumps up and grabs his jar of Vaseline. With a look of terror in his eyes, the girlfriend's father backs away from the table and exclaims, "Okay, enough already, I'll do the damn dishes." In summary, the police arrested Patrick Lawrence, a 22-year-old white male, in a pumpkin patch at 11:38 p.m. on Friday night. On Monday, at the courthouse, Lawrence was charged with lewd and lascivious behavior, public indecency, and public intoxication. The suspect explained that as he was passing a pumpkin patch on his way home from a drinking session, when he decided to stop, "You know how a pumpkin is soft and squishy inside, and there was no one around for miles, or at least I thought there wasn't anyone around," he stated in an interview. Lawrence went on to say that he pulled over to the side of the road, picked out a pumpkin that he felt was appropriate to his purpose, cut a hole in it, and proceeded to satisfy his alleged need. "Guess I was really into it, you know?" he commented with evident embarrassment. In the process of doing the lewd deed, Lawrence failed to notice an approaching police car and was unaware of his audience until Officer Brenda Taylor approached him. "It was an unusual situation, that's for sure," said Officer Taylor. "I walked up to Lawrence and he's just banging away at this pumpkin." Officer Taylor went on to describe what happened when she approached Lawrence. "I said, 'Excuse me, sir, but do you realize that you're having sex with a pumpkin?' He froze and was clearly very surprised that I was there, and then he looked me straight in the face and said, 'A pumpkin? Oh, shit. Is it midnight already?'" Yesterday, Mark had an appointment to see the urologist for a prostate exam. Of course, he was a bit on edge because all his friends have either gone under the knife or had those pellets implanted. The waiting room was filled with patients. As he approached the receptionist's desk, he noticed that the receptionist was a large, unfriendly woman who looked like a sumo wrestler. Mark gave her his name. In a very loud voice, the receptionist said, "Yes, I have your name here. You want to see the doctor about impotence, right?" All the patients in the waiting room snapped their heads around to look at Mark, a now very embarrassed man. But as usual, he recovered quickly, and in an equally loud voice replied, "No, I've come to inquire about a sex change operation, but I don't want the same doctor that did yours." The room erupted in applause. "Don't mess with old retired guys." At a senior citizens' luncheon, an elderly gentleman and an elderly lady struck up a conversation and discovered that they both loved to fish. Since both of them were widowed, they decided to go fishing together the next day. The gentleman picked the lady up and they headed to the river to his fishing boat and started out on their adventure. They were riding down the river when there was a fork in the river, and the gentleman asked the lady, "Do you want to go up or down?" All of a sudden, the lady stripped off her shirt and pants and made mad, passionate love to the man right there in the boat. When they finished, the man couldn't believe what had just happened, but he had just experienced the best sex that he'd had in years. They fished for a while and continued on down the river, when soon they came upon another fork in the river. He again asked the lady, "Up or down?" There she went again, stripped off her clothes and made wild, passionate love to him again. This really impressed the elderly gentleman, so he asked her to go fishing again the next day. She said yes, and there they were the next day, riding in the boat when they came upon the fork in the river, and the elderly gentleman asked, "Up or down?" The woman replied, "Down." A little puzzled and disappointed, the gentleman guided the boat down the river when he came upon another fork in the river, and he asked the lady, "Up or down?" She replied, "Up." This really confused the gentleman, so he asked, "What's the deal? Yesterday, every time I asked you if you wanted to go up or down, you made passionate love to me. Now today, nothing." She replied, "Well, yesterday I wasn't wearing my hearing aid and I thought the choices were or drown." A young woman was preparing for her wedding. She asked her mother to go out and buy a nice, long black negligee and carefully place it in her suitcase so it would not wrinkle. Well, the mom forgot until the last minute to get it, so she dashes out and could only find a short pink nightie. So she bought it and threw it into the suitcase. After the wedding, the bride and groom enter their hotel room. The groom was a little shy and self-conscious, so he asked his new bride to change in the bathroom and made her promise not to peek while he got ready for bed. While she was in the bathroom, the bride opened her suitcase and saw the negligee her mother had thrown in there. She shouted out, "Well, hell, it's short, pink, and wrinkled." The groom cried out, "For God's sake, I told you not to peek!" A mother was walking down the hall when she heard a humming sound coming from her daughter's bedroom. When she opened the door, she found her daughter naked on the bed with a vibrator. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed. The daughter replied, "I'm 35 and still living at home with my parents, and this is the closest I'll ever get to a husband." Later that week, the father was in the kitchen and heard a humming sound coming from the basement. When he went downstairs, he found his daughter naked on the sofa with her vibrator. "What are you doing?" he exclaimed. The daughter replied, "I'm 35 and still living at home with my parents, and this is the closest I'll ever get to a husband." A couple of days later, the mother heard the humming sound again, this time in the living room. In there, she found her husband watching the Super Bowl on television with the vibrator buzzing away beside him. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed. He replied, "Watching the game with my son-in-law." A young couple had recently gotten married, and after 3 months, the wife went to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor told her she was pregnant. She was thrilled, but the doctor also informed her that due to a rare complication, she shouldn't have sex with her husband until after the birth. The wife went home and told her husband what the doctor had said. The husband agreed to try and hold out. After a month, the husband couldn't resist anymore and asked his wife to be intimate. Of course, she refused. Seeing her husband so depressed and sad, the wife called him over and said, "My dear husband, I know you're suffering. Here, take $100 and go to a sex worker to relieve yourself." The husband took the money and thought to himself, "What a wonderful and considerate wife," opened the door, and went down the stairs, feeling cheerful. When he reached the first floor, the neighbor's wife saw him and asked, "Why are you so happy?" He happily told her the whole story. She then said, "Why go looking outside for a sex worker? Give me the $100 and I'll take care of you." The man agreed, gave her the money, went into her apartment, enjoyed himself for 20 minutes, and then returned home. His wife saw him and was astonished, asking, "What happened, dear? You came back so quickly. Did you change your mind?" The husband replied, "I went downstairs and the neighbor saw me. She offered to take the money instead, so that's what I did." His wife got very angry and said, "What a jerk. When she was pregnant, I did her husband for free." A burglar breaks into a home and holds the husband and wife hostage. At gunpoint, he forces the two to sit on chairs and ties them to the chairs. The burglar slowly and methodically begins robbing the house. The burglar has taken everything of value and is ready to leave while the homeowners are still bound to their chairs. Suddenly, the man yells at the burglar, "Please untie her. Please let her go." "No, I'm not untying either of you so that the authorities get notified as late as possible," says the criminal. "Don't worry. Your neighbors will soon wonder why your lights are still on throughout the night and check in with you." Yet the man again pleads, "Please, just untie her. I'll do anything." "Look, I need to get away with this crime. I'm sorry, I can't leave anything up to chance," says the burglar, feeling a little ashamed of himself. "I'm begging you, man. Just let her go. She won't call the cops, I promise." The man is now crying. The burglar, still unwilling to budge, does find it quite touching how much his hostage cared about his wife. "Wow," he says. "You must really love your wife to beg me to untie her so desperately." "Not really," the man replies in a state of frenzy. "It's just that she will be home in 15 minutes. Clark Kent was lying in his deathbed with his wife Lois Lane beside him. After some time, Lois said, "Darling, I have to confess something. Years ago, I had an affair with Superman. It was only one night, but I've regretted it ever since." I hope you can forgive me." "You don't need to worry about that because," Clark said as he took off his glasses, "I am Superman. Even if you didn't know it was me, in my eyes you were always faithful." "Oh, thank God," said Lois. "I can't tell you what a weight that is off my chest." "Glad we cleared that up," whispered Clark. "That makes two of us," smiled Lois. "I guess this means you were Batman too."